Hello class, welcome to lesson 7 in module 4 where we're going to learn how the steps it takes to factor expressions. How do we factor expressions? So I'm going to go ahead and zoom into the first chunk of this today. I'm trying to find a good place to cut it off. Let's go here. I know this is kind of a lot, but copy that first half. And we'll scroll it down, and this is the second half. I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there. Alrighty, so like we said, today's lesson is going to be about how to factor expressions. The question we hope to answer is, how can I rewrite expressions in factored form? And now factoring is something that is oftentimes pretty intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, it feels pretty neat to be able to do what we're going to learn how to do today. So step 1, when writing an expression in factored form, step 1 is we need to identify the greatest common factor of the given values. So an example of step 1 looks like this. We start with 10a plus 15b. Our values that we're working with are 10a and 15b. Really, the numbers are the only things we can manipulate. So we have 10 and 15. What we need to do is identify the greatest common factor of 10 and 15, and we've done that down here. The GCF of 10 and 15 is 5. And we know that because 5 is the biggest number that can evenly go into 10 and 15. Okay, so step 1 is we pick out the GCF. Step 2, below that, is we need to identify how many times the GCF, or the greatest common factor, goes into each value and rewrite the values as a product with the GCF. Now that's where it kind of gets confusing. So let's try and tune in real closely here. We know that 5 goes into 10 and 5 goes into 15, and it's the biggest number that can. So we need to identify how many times it'll go into the value. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 5 goes into 15 3 times. So we take these two values, our 5 and our 2 times, and we put them together. We write 10 as a product of 5 and 2. So down here we have 5 times 2. We know that equals 10. And because the a is hanging out over here, we know we're multiplying it by a. So we have 5 times 2 times a, which can be simplified as 5 times 2a. Because we know that 2 times a, you can remove that little dot, and 2a just means 2 times a. And over here with the 15, it's the same thing. 5 goes into 15 3 times. So we take those two values, 5 and 3, and write them as a multiplication problem. 5 times 3, and because we have the b hanging out, we know that we're multiplying times b. So 5 times 3 times b is our long product, and if we simplify it, we can remove this dot between the 3 and the b and show this as 5 times 3b. So our new values that we've rewritten, 10a is the same thing as 5 times 2a, and 15b is the same thing as 5 times 3b. Okay? Now, step 3, the final step in this process of factoring expressions, looks like this. We need to rewrite the multiplication expressions by placing the GCF outside of the parentheses and the remaining factors that are left over inside the parentheses. So what we've done here is we took our two problems. We had 5 times 2a, 5 times 3b. We took the GCF out of that, took out our 5. We put it on the outside of the parentheses down here. And then what was left over, the 2a and the 3b, plus sign in between, we brought those down inside the parentheses. So we have 5 times 2a plus 3b. finally, we know, because we've gone through the steps, that 10a plus 15b, this first expression, can be rewritten in factored form by taking out the 5 from the 10 and the 15 and rewriting it like this. 5 times 2a plus 3b. We know that these two expressions are equivalent. And a quick thing to remember down here at the bottom, sometimes the variable, or the letter, can be the GCF. Sometimes you'll see expressions where the actual number parts of the values don't share any common factors. So you might have to take out the variable, which is the GCF. I'll show you an example of that real quick, and we'll practice it a lot in class. So in this scenario, let's say we've got a 9a plus a 7a. Now here, in this expression, no numbers go into 9 and 7 other than 1, so it doesn't really have a GCF. They don't share any common factors other than our a's. Okay, so our a's now are going to become our greatest common factor. And if we were to expand this out, this would really look like 9 times a plus 7 times a. And what we'll do is we take our common factors, just like step 2, take our common factors out, put it on the outside of the parentheses. So a is on the outside of the parentheses, and inside the parentheses is whatever we have left over. So our 9, our plus, and our 7. So we bring those down. We have our 9, our plus, and our 7 inside the parentheses. So we know, if we can come back here where it's a little bit more clear, we know that 9a plus 7a can be rewritten as a times 9 plus 7 in parentheses. That's factored form. Anyway, we will practice this in class, and I think it might take a little bit of time, but once we get it, it's pretty neat to learn how to factor these things. So hopefully now we can at least start to answer the question, how can I rewrite expressions in factored form? Thank you very much. Goodbye.